So we're talking about.
Hello, everyone. I am Summit Mayor Elizabeth Fagan, and I wanted to welcome you to our very first town hall. This is going to be a quarterly occurrence, at least that's our intention. Our first town hall is about public safety, and the future ones will be about various topics that we hear that are concerning to you or that are relevant and that residents are asking about. So I'm here with our incoming Chief Ryan Peters. We thought this would be a great opportunity to introduce him to all of you. And so I'm going to start with asking Chief Peters. Hi, Chief.
Hey, how are you?
Hey, how are you?
Good.
When did you come in here?
Been here for quite a few minutes, actually. Been preparing for this town hall.
Excellent. So why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and your trajectory as a Summit police officer?
Sure. So a little bit about me. I was born into a law enforcement family. My father is a retired sergeant from the Cranford Police Department. My uncle also retired from the Cranford Police Department. And my mother's brother, my Uncle Charlie, retired from New Jersey Transit as a sergeant as well. So to say that law enforcement has been kind of ingrained in my DNA since birth, I would make that assessment. That being said, I grew up down the shore, grew up in Toms River. Played some sports growing up, ultimately ended up at Towson University in Baltimore, Maryland, which was a great experience. Obtained a Bachelor of Science in Finance. After graduation, dabbled in the financial market a little bit. Got my Series 7, worked for Morgan Stanley, then ultimately with MetLife for about a year. And at that point, I kind of sat down with my father and had a conversation about my life's goals and what I think would be more suitable for my personality traits, right? Also did the math. Being a police finance guy did the math. So coming from a family of law enforcement, I understood that, I would never be rich, but I would have a stable career enough so to raise a family, especially here in New Jersey, which is obviously very expensive. So from there, I separated from finance and ultimately pursued my career as law enforcement. Attended Monmouth County Alternate Route Police Academy in 2007, which is a program for people who want to get into law enforcement to make themselves more marketable. They can pay for themselves to go through the police academy. It's somewhat like a college semester, which is a little tricky because you're in the police academy Monday through Friday, regular business hours, and you're paying to be there, and you're not generating any income. So during that time, I worked on the weekends to kind of stay afloat financially. Ultimately, getting hired by Summit shortly after graduation in 2007. Started here in Summit in the patrol division. Got my feet wet there, ultimately got quite a bit of experience. So the Patrol Bureau, for everybody who doesn't know, those are the officers wearing a similar uniform as me, riding around in the black and white patrol cars, responding to calls for service. Did that till through 2017, at which point I got promoted to sergeant. Immediately got assigned to the Community Services Bureau as the detective sergeant responsible for juvenile investigations. Which I thought was great because it gave me the opportunity to kind of build relationships with not only the schools, but parents and local constituents in town. During that time as well, I was assigned to the Union County Emergency Response Team in 2010, ultimately trying out for the Union County SWAT Team in 2011. And while I was working my way up through the ranks within the Summit Police Department, I did the same at the county level on the team. The team is not a full-time team, it is a part-time team, it's regional. So what that means is the Union County SWAT team is made up of officers from the department's 21 towns all throughout Union County, and they meet regularly to train. And ultimately, if there's something that happens within Union County that a police department, a municipal police department feels that is above kind of their, whether it be through equipment or just their policies or procedures that they can't handle, they call upon the SWAT team. So got a lot of great experience in the SWAT team. Did 10 years there. Ultimately left the team when I got promoted to captain. I was a team leader at the time. To circle back, in 2017 got promoted to detective sergeant, and then in 2021 got promoted to captain. Immediately assumed command of the support services division, which is a combination of the Community Services Bureau, which again I was familiar with, being a sergeant in that bureau for a few years, as well as the Detective Bureau, which I was also familiar with, being a detective sergeant. Over the last 3 years, I've worked at the administrative level within the police department. As a captain, overseeing accreditation, internal affairs, purchasing, grants, training, a variety of different areas that, while at the time as a regular police officer didn't really understand how things worked, ultimately got a general understanding and more of a detailed understanding as time went on as what an administrator at the police department's responsibilities are. And then obviously transitioning from Chief Sikorsky, who's just finishing up 36 years of dedicated service with the city, Served under him directly for the last 3 years, picked his brain on every little detail. You can't make up for 36 years worth of experience. I'm at 18 years, so about half of the amount of time that he's been there. But what I can say is that my tenure under Chief Zagorski has been invaluable. He's taught me a ton of lessons from the administrative level, and I'm confident in my ability and the ability of our future leaders of the police department that we're going to take the trajectory that he's left us on and continue that path forward. That's a little bit about me. I can keep going if you want. In my free time, I enjoy long walks on the beach. I do enjoy surfing. I coach both my kids. My son is 10, my daughter's 6. Both of them play a variety of sports. So if I'm not here at the Summit Police Department, I'm typically at home or coaching my kids. My beautiful wife works for the Board of Education in Robbinsville. So we're both very busy. We both put in north of 40, if not 50 hours a week. But we respect each other's professional time. So we find balance. I like to say that's easy, and we have very constructive conversations. But what I can tell you is that having a calendar on a whiteboard next to the kitchen definitely serves a purpose. So that's kind of what goes on the whiteboard stays on the whiteboard. And if it's not on the whiteboard, it doesn't exist.
I was going to say, what happens when you're not near the whiteboard? What do you do then?
Then you got problems. You got to answer to the boss. And unfortunately, I might be the boss here at the police department, but I think I fall fourth in the pecking order of the house.
For sure.
So.
You don't have any pets, so you're not...
No, there's no pets. We had one goldfish, didn't work out well.
Okay, great. So
that's where we are.
Understand the pecking order of the Peters household.
That's
excellent. Right. So I guess, one of the things that I have noted in sort of getting to know you as captain is, and something you've sort of touched on a little bit is the relationships that you have throughout the state. So things that you've learned with SWAT and the sort of the ability to call on another department to, another municipality to ask for advice, solutions, ideas. Can you touch a little bit on how that's been helpful and how you think that would be helpful as you roll into your chief role?
Sure. So a few things about being assigned to SWAT. You're exposed to a higher level of training and equipment that most municipal officers don't get exposed to. So the benefit of that is we can send 1 or 2 officers to this regional task force. So it's not too much of a burden on the city as far as financial output and manpower, but it also allows the city to take advantage of that additional training and equipment that we have access to by being on the team. In addition, I would make the argument that not only did the training and equipment allow us to bring some of that stuff back and train our officers in-house to get us at a higher level than most, but also, to your point, the relationships that I've leveraged. I'm confident that I have a representative at every police department within Union County that I have a close working relationship with, that if we need something, it's only a phone call away. And the one great thing about being in law enforcement is that it's a large family. We have our family here in Summit, but we also have a larger family within the county, state level, and national. So we're all here to support each other. A lot of us are experiencing a lot of same issues, within our police departments and within the jurisdictions in which we police. So it is nice to have that helping hand and have those resources pretty much a phone call away to rely on in case we have any questions that need answered.
Great. Thank you.
Appreciate that question, by the way.
Of course.
Let's keep them coming.
Okay, I have another one for you.
All right, let's go.
As you transition to your new role as chief, what are your top priorities?
So 2 main priorities. I'd say one is internal and one is external. So internally, we've seen a drop off in interest in policing as a choice for a career. Post 2020, after COVID, we had a large exodus of law enforcement officers that retired, which is great. They've earned it. 25, 30 years in law enforcement is very taxing mentally and physically. But that being said, when you have a mass exodus of senior officers, there's a gap in experience, right? Sure. So in the last 5 years, I believe the Summit Police Department hired over 20 new officers. So that would be, a good portion of our police department, nearly half with less than 5 years worth of experience. An administration that's also young. Like I said, Chief Zagorski with 36 years on is hanging up his hat, and I'll be taking over with 18 years on. So there is a steep learning curve that we're trying to stay ahead of. We do that through training. In our recruitment process, we try to make ourselves more attractive, obviously competing against other police departments. We're building a culture here that not only supports our officers' mental health, but we are a huge proponent of training. So that being said, if an officer has an idea to go to training, even if it's outside the traditional wheelhouse, we'll listen to them. If they put up a compelling argument, sky's the limit. We always send officers for training. And I gotta be honest, when we're interviewing a lot of officers from other police departments, we find that is one of the things that is their main priority. They'll go to a police department maybe they don't feel as if they were trained properly, or they're not comfortable in their position. And in this day and age, the expectation for law enforcement is set very high. Because the stakes are high, right? So it's our job as administrators to provide the policies, procedures, training, and equipment for the boots on the ground to be able to do their job effectively. So that's my goal internally, is to not only maintain a high level of recruitment, but also retention, and build a workforce or a working environment where our officers can deal with the stress levels that they need to deal with outside, but also be able to come inside and feel supported, and feel as if there is a training deficiency, that we'll be able to support them and get them up to speed. Because I can tell you from firsthand, there's nothing worse for a police officer to be responding to a call while troubleshooting how you're going to act when you get there. And I remember them telling all of us in the police academy, you truly won't feel confident responding to a call for service till at least your 5-year mark. And I can attest to that, because Summit's a great community. It's a safe community. But there are times, we don't deal with everything on a daily basis. So there are times where, we call them hot calls. Something might be generated where all officers might have not dealt with that yet in their career, or not dealt with it in a while. So it's our job in between those types of calls for service to make sure that the training is up to par, so they know what to do when they get on scene. As far as externally, I'd say our main goal at this point would be to get the message out to any criminal element that Summit's just not going to lay down. Overall, we are a safe community. Statistically, the data has supported that we are trending in the right direction. But that being said, we are not on our own island, right? Summit is a city. Not only is it a city, it's a city that's divided by 2 main state thoroughfares. I mean, we're at 78 and 24 split. You're right here in Summit, which exposes us to some criminal elements that come into town. Summit's a great town. It attracts a lot of people who want to live in a safe community, and but also be close to the metropolitan area. Sure. So there are pros and cons to that, and we understand that. It's my goal to kind of get the message out to any criminal element that the Summit Police Department will do everything we can to keep our residents safe and to address any issues that come forth. How is that done? I mean, I think we'll probably get into that furthermore amongst the questions, but again, 2 main priorities: recruitment and retention, and building a safe working environment where officers feel confident in their ability to do their job, and then also maintain a solid police force where, in policing, we don't work in a static environment. We're constantly throwing darts at a moving target, and that target is often data-driven, but it also could be supported by speaking with residents, speaking with our constituents, our stakeholders in town. So, we're always readjusting our mission and our plan, okay. But one thing that we don't deviate from is sending the message that if you come to this town, we will do everything we can to protect our residents, and then if a crime is committed in our town, we will maximize our ability to either solve the crime or put the person responsible and make them be held responsible with charges.
Thank you. So speaking of data, since you mentioned that, something that people ask a lot is how are we trending in terms of crimes? So I would say, burglaries and auto thefts and things that we talk about kind of on a regular basis. How are we trending here in Summit year over year, and also relative to surrounding communities?
So I'd like to find some wood to knock on, because the last time I said we were trending in the right direction, we had 3 burglaries in a week. If you look at the data, it does support the assessment that we're trending in a good direction, right? But like I had just previously said, unfortunately or fortunately, we are in an area that is in the tri-state area, and like I said, we are not on our own island. So although the data can start to trend in the right direction, which I do believe is a direct result of a lot of the initiatives that we put forward, increasing manpower on our shifts, leveraging technology. Obviously don't want to give the playbook away to the criminals, but we are leveraging whatever technology that we can, whether it be drones, whether it be license plate readers, whether it be a variety of other technology that we've invested in to support our mission. And in addition to a variety of other things that we've deployed to kind of counter that data or those statistics. But that being said, overall Summit is a great town. I do have statistics here. I don't want to get too far into the weeds, because we go over them at council meetings and they're all posted on our websites. But like I had said, I do think we're trending in the right direction. That being said, we might go through a period of time where things are safe here. Officers tend to get complacent. Residents tend to get a little bit of complacent. I get it. You know, like I had said before, I'm married with 2 kids. I've been on the receiving end of picking 2 kids up on my way home from the YMCA aftercare, multiple backpacks, my work bag, getting the mail, 27 Amazon packages, trying to get through the door. And, you know, it happens. You know, the car gets left unlocked, the garage door gets left open. I get it. Life gets in the way. What I've done at my own house and what I encourage most residents, all residents to do as well, is just set a nightly routine. And sometimes that nightly routine kind of flows with everything, and I get to lock all the doors, make sure the vehicles are buttoned up, make sure all the lights and the alarm's set. But other times I'm in bed and, you know, I'm getting ready to fall asleep and I realize I didn't go through my routine, and it you know, you have to get up and do it. It's one of those things. It's like brushing your teeth. Like you don't want to forget it. And I am very mindful that we have had scenarios where people have done the right thing. They've locked all their doors, they've secured their garage doors and their windows, and we still have had burglaries. So, you know, I don't think that there's a one-stop shop solution for crimes of that nature, but I do encourage people that if you see something, you know, the mayor and I are working on a campaign, a See Something, Say Something campaign. It sounds simple, but you know, I can't tell you how many times in the last 18 years I've been present for a call for service where someone had taken the train into the city and called us 3 hours later and said, you know, there was someone on my block earlier and I didn't think to call, but now that I'm at work, you know, I told a few coworkers and I think I should have called and reported it, and come to find out that person was burglarizing cars or pulling door handles. So we always encourage, you know, if you see something, say something. Last year we dealt with nearly 50,000 calls for service. You're not bothering us. I know a lot of people say they don't want to bother the police. That's why we're here. We work 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. We're even here on holidays. But we're here to answer those calls. We certainly don't want residents taking, you know, their own action or encountering someone who might be of the criminal element. But call us. That's why we're here. You know,
So,
worst case scenario, we check it out, and the person's supposed to be where they're supposed to be, and we move on. So if I could take anything away from mitigating those kind of criminal acts that are hard to avoid, it would be just be vigilant, work with your neighbors, work with your family members, have a plan, and again, if you see something, definitely say something. Give us a call.
And how's the best way to get in touch with you?
Well, if it's an emergency, 911, obviously, that's simple enough. And then our non-emergency number, 908-273-0051. So again, we do have people that sometimes call emergency number when it's not really an emergency. And you know, we get it. It's all about perspective. For an emergency for you might be different than an emergency for me. So we're not going to fault you for calling 911, but we may ask you to call the non-emergency number if you're tying that up, because we only have so many lines that we can speak to somebody on if they're a true emergency that comes in. But again, we're here. Dispatch is working the same amount of hours as we are, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So if you see something, we encourage you to say something. And like I had said, to mitigate some of this criminal activity, I think setting a routine is really the way to go.
Thank you. So I just have to go back to the 27 Amazon packages.
Yeah.
Can we talk about, is that your problem or your wife's problem?
I'm not going to comment on
okay,
that at this
good.
point.
Okay,
Right.
excellent.
I'll refer to the next panel.
And I forgot to mention, we do have an option for viewers at home to go ahead and write questions in the chat. Our PIO is here and she will share with us once we've gone through some of the questions that were sent ahead of time. So if you do have questions as we're talking, please feel free to put them in the chat and we'll address them as we can. Okay, Chief, how many vehicles and it can be a percentage or a number if you know, whatever's more at the ready for you to answer, of the vehicles that have been stolen, what percentage or what number of those do you recover, and are you catching some of the perpetrators? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so I would say the vast majority of the vehicles we recover. You know, I don't know if I could put a percentage on it yet. I'd have to consult with our detective bureau, maintains those statistics. Sure. But I can tell you, you know, oftentimes we recover the vehicles before the need to know goes out. You know, most recently we had a pretty dramatic burglary and auto theft in town. And we were on that car before I actually got to work, and I get to work at 6:30 in the morning. So our detective bureau got called out in the middle of the night. They were able to utilize some of the tracking technology that was in the vehicle to locate it sitting on the side of the street, quote unquote, cooling off in Essex County. And you know, that's our goal. Like if every single time, you know, a vehicle gets stolen in town, our detectives go down and they recover and try to get back to the resident as soon as possible. Obviously, you know, some work needs to be done to get that car rekeyed. Right. But then that criminal element that did come up and hope to use that to either commit another crime or possibly, you know, trade it for money or whatever the case may be, if every single time they come to Summit, not only they're met with, police resistance, but also they do carry out the crime and they do get some type of proceeds, but then we come in without delay
Right.
and find the car and recover it. And our hope is that at a certain point that, they just move on and stop coming to Summit.
Okay.
But I would say the vast majority we have had a few scenarios, one specifically within the last few weeks where our detectives were down and located a car and gotten 4 arrests out of it, 4 bodies in that car. So, which is great because at the end of the day, it sends that message that we're not just restricted to the boundaries of the city of Summit, right? So we're going to go wherever we need to within reason to track these people down and recover that property.
Great, thank you. And I want to say thank you to our police department because they work tirelessly, as Chief mentioned, 24/7, and so that's why they're so successful. That's why you guys are so successful. So thank you for that. Another question I have for you is, what are some of the factors that contribute to public safety in Summit?
Specifically,
Safety issues. What do you we talk a lot about what the public is concerned about. So I guess, what are kind of the things that you think of when you think about public safety in Summit?
So specific to Summit, there's a variety of things. I don't want to pull out an outline, but certain things that I'd like to reference that I talked about. Obviously, home burglary and auto theft is a huge issue for residents, as it is in the town where I live as well. I could not imagine, I've not been victimized, but I could not imagine sleeping upstairs in my house with my wife and children and have somebody enter my house.
Mm-hmm.
Not only the the emotional response, but the lack of ability to protect, feeling to be able to protect your family.
Sure.
So I want people to understand that the Summit Police Department does make a strong distinguishment between property crimes and crimes that directly affect our residents and obviously are terrifying.
Right.
So some of the things we've done over the past few years, we've revised the way we patrol at night.
Mm-hmm.
We've subdivided a lot of our sectors to focus on problem areas that the data and statistics support.
Mm-hmm.
In addition, we utilize overtime details. So whenever we do see a trend moving in that direction, we'll bring in additional patrols. Mm-hmm. More rubber on the road. I'm not sure if most people know this, but the city of Summit, we patrol over 80 miles of roadway. 6 square miles, but 80 miles of roadway for the police officers to patrol on any given time. So over 8,000 households, 3,000 buildings, over a dozen schools, multiple parks, and we're responsible for all of it. So it's a heavy lift. We're up for the challenge, but some of the things that we do every once in a while, we need to sit down and kind of adjust. Like I said, we're throwing darts at a moving target. It depends on what the criminal element is doing, what the data supports, and then how we respond. We work with state, I think there was another question that came in, so I'll get ahead of myself, but we work with state and county task force.
That was my next question.
Oh, sorry, let me get ahead of it. So we do work with local, state, and county task force, whether it be auto theft task force or task force that are deployed for a variety of reasons. We always make it a point to participate in them, not only because we want to be proactive in helping our neighboring communities, but also there might be a need for them to be deployed in our community, and they have been in the past, which is great because, again, Summit Police Department currently employs 50 sworn officers, so we are limited in the amount of area that we can cover, but if data supports a deployment of additional officers, we'll call on these task force. And not only, do we call on them during times of need, and do they call on us as well that we support it, but we share information, and information sharing is huge when it comes to law enforcement because oftentimes these criminal elements won't focus their target on one main area. They'll bounce around for obvious reasons, right? So
Sure.
if they hit Union County, maybe for a week, 2 weeks, and then they'll move on to Essex County. Then maybe they'll move out to New York or down the shore in Monmouth County. They've gone. So we're constantly reassessing and readjusting our deployment tactics.
Okay.
The other couple other things that have assisted us, surveillance camera registration is something that we rolled out a few years ago, which assists us if there is a crime that occurs on the street. For people who aren't familiar with the program, this is not giving the police department access to your surveillance cameras. All it does is provides us a list of residents and or businesses that do have cameras. So if there is a crime that occurs in that area, we have direct contact information with those people to reach out and say, hey, did you see anything on your ring camera between these hours? Because we had a crime that occurred on your street. So I do encourage everybody who's watching to tell your friends, to tell your family, to register your cameras, and in addition to sign up for public alerts.
Sure.
I mean, we've been very vocal about having people sign up for public notification.
Sure.
One of the things that we really hang our hat on in the police department is transparency. I took over as the public information officer last year, so you will notice that a lot of our public information excerpts that get put out are similar to police reports. Only information, we find a balance between what people need to know and what people want to know. Oftentimes we give everything what people need to know, and usually that want to know portion could potentially compromise an investigation. So I hope people understand that information that we do withhold is because it would compromise the investigation. Like I had said, we were sitting on the car from that burglary within hours before the information even went out. So that happens quite often.
Can I interrupt you for 1 second? Because you brought up a couple things I want to make sure that we are very clear with the public about. One is, you jogged my memory, or a lot of people ask, why wasn't there an Nixle?
Yes.
What is a need to know? What is a Nixle, and when are they employed?
Yep.
So that people can understand the difference and the why.
Yeah. So for us, the way we kind of categorize them, so a Nixle for us would be something immediate, right? So if there was an attempted car theft and we need to get that information out ASAP because school's getting dismissed, we want to put that information out as soon as possible. It's going to go out via Nixle, and from there it also gets shared through the city's website, Civic Rec, in addition to our social media. So it's a multi-layered approach in which we put information out. So depending on which notification platform you signed up for will determine what type of notification you receive. So Nixles are need to know in real time. We'll put out descriptions, we might even put out videos or pictures. We've done that. In addition to just criminal activity, it's also road closures. Okay. Is that where you're going?
Yeah, no, I was just going to say, a lot of people still are unclear. So if there's an immediate threat to the public,
yes.
if you believe that there's a suspect that's live around
in the
area,
yes.
If you know for certain that the suspects are gone, the car that's been stolen is out of town,
yes,
that's not a Nixle.
That transitions then to what's called the need to know.
Right.
So the Nixles again aren't just they're just not exclusionary for just criminal activity. In addition, if we have a water main break or a road closure or a power outage or a weather event that's coming, so we'll use Nixle for need to know information in real time. To your point, if the crime has occurred and we have information to believe that the actors are no longer in town, the vehicle is no longer in town, we typically don't put out a Nixle right away. What we'll do is we'll gather as much information as possible. You'll see what's called the need to know go out. Those need to knows are as detailed as they can be. And again, it's need to know, not necessarily want to know. So it's information that we feel is pertinent for the city, for the residents of the city to know, while also balancing the privacy of the victims. So we have had victims in the past that say, can you not share this amongst the community? And we do our best to kind of limit the information, because not only is it traumatizing for a victim to have somebody burglarize their house or steal their car, it can be embarrassing, right? So we always try to skate that fine line. And with the need to knows, again, it's more calculated. Some time might pass. It might take till mid-morning or maybe even early afternoon. The reason we do that is because I want to make sure that the information is as accurate as possible. The last thing we want to do as a police department is put out inaccurate information and then have to scale back or revise it, because that just corrodes the public's trust, right? So everything we put out has been carefully vetted. We'll speak with the detectives, we'll speak with the officers, we'll make sure we review other reports, and even get information from the resident and make sure that when those need to knows go out, that they're as accurate as possible. But what I can say is transparency is our number one goal when it comes to public information. There's no agenda behind that. It's just transparency. Put it out. It is unfortunate because sometimes when we do put information out, it can create this sense of anxiety. Right. We understand that, but I do want to assure the public that we do live in a safe town. It is not our intention to create any additional anxiety. It's not our intention to make people feel embarrassed if they were victimized. It's just, we feel if, in my town, as a resident, if there was a burglary in my neighborhood, I would want to know about it, because I want to take the necessary steps to protect myself and my family. And we understand that.
It's a good reminder, right? It's a good reminder to double check that you locked your door.
Yep.
It's something simple like that.
Yeah, 100%.
The other thing you touched on was the security camera registration.
Mm-hmm.
That is through our website.
Yep.
And we could post that later, or maybe
it's on the website. Yeah.
Post in the chat how
And
to do that.
we also
maybe.
have the home security assessment.
Yeah. So keep going.
Yeah.
I know
So
you had other things to say,
yeah.
but I just wanted to make sure we were
touch on that.
Told people how to do that.
Yeah. So we do offer a program. We started it, I want to say, within the last year and a half. Was a home security assessment program. So we certified 6 of our officers to pretty much respond to your house. They'll take an internal and external assessment of your program of your property and provide you a report. It's not necessarily a grading system, although some neighbors do compete. But at the end of the day, we'll provide recommendations to pretty much target hardening. So if we see gaps in coverage with spotlights or motion lights, or maybe make recommendations to change, some locks or garage doors. We understand completely that some of this creates a financial liability for the resident, but it's our goal to provide the residents the proper tools and information so they can better protect themselves and their families and their residences.
That was I actually finally, it took me about a year, because I think it was last spring that we started that. And it took me about a year, but I finally did it. And it was terrific. And the sort of takeaway that I would say that you can kind of run through your head if you want to do kind of an unprofessional home assessment is, I have to think like a criminal. Mm-hmm. Where am I getting access to the home, right? So that was kind of what Officer Katiga said to me as he was looking at the entry points to my home. So it was an easy thing to sort of, that's a great comment, because you can do that. You don't even have to have the home security assessment. Obviously, these guys are trained professionals that can come and really poke holes where you might not even realize. But it is a good thought process to say, okay, well, lock your door. Maybe you need a second lock. Maybe, there's a way in that it's kind of like, well, if the kids get locked out, they can get in that way.
Yep.
Well, that probably isn't terrific.
Yeah, that's probably the way that a criminal would
right,
tell
exactly.
them.
So think like a criminal.
And one other program that we offer that most people don't know about is our vacant house check program. So if you do go away on vacation for an extended period of time, you can register your house with the Summit Police Department. If there's, we deal with certain people in town that might have had threats or, certain people that are harassing behavior, that we'll take that to the next level. We'll do specific checks of their house and actually, get out and walk around for the vacant house check program, but we'll give extra attention to your house. So if we know that you're not home and you're canceling your mail and the house will be dark for a week, the police department will give extra attention to your house. We'll do extra drive-bys, and that's as simple as the other 2 programs to register online. All the information can be found at the city's website.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
So I'm going to shift gears a tiny bit. And because one of the questions that came in was regarding the resident protection ordinance.
Gotcha.
We passed that about a year ago. The question is, how many times has that ordinance how many times have summonses been issued related to that ordinance? And do you have any follow-up information about that?
So at this point, we have 8 of those summonses were issued, and they were all in conjunction with other state charges. So what happens when somebody's charged with an indictable offense is it gets heard at the Superior Court level, which is the county level, and this is a municipal ordinance that's getting packaged up with those state charges. So to date, from what I understand and speaking with the municipal court judge, only one of those ordinances has actually been disposed of here within our municipal court, and the rest of them are still working through the court system with those state charges. But to date, we've had 8 ordinances written, and again, like I said, these weren't just random charges. These were charges that were attached to either an attempted motor vehicle theft or a home burglary or something of that nature. And it does serve several purposes. So there is a financial fine that's attached to the resident protection ordinance, and what we hope to get out of that is a financial deterrent, right? So a lot of times you'll get these state charges and you'll go to a Superior Court level, and depending on your criminal history, sometimes they can be combined and ultimately downgraded, and the financial fines associated with them can be suspended or not. Maybe they don't. But at the end of the day, if we have a fine that's attached to Summit specific that says if you come here, not only are you going to be charged with the state statute like you would anywhere else, we also have this municipal ordinance that will attach to that carries a heavy financial burden. Right. It might prohibit people from coming in and committing that crime here in Summit. So
there's a community service alternative as well written into the ordinance.
Yep.
So just so we're clear, because I think some of it was
concerns about people's financial
right.
ability to pay the fine.
Right.
But it allows the prosecutors to, like I said, a lot of these cases, if you have multiple charges and it's multi-layered, charges can get consolidated, and having this municipal ordinance as another tool in the prosecutor's tool belt, from what we've heard, a lot of positive feedback. Right. So overall, I think it's going great. Our officers are trained on it. They understand the difference between someone walking by and looking at a nice car and attempting to break into that car. So that I know that was a lot of the concerns, but we really haven't had any scenarios where we've had pushback, which is good.
Great, awesome. So another question that came in was regarding the percentage increase in parking summonses.
Okay.
In 2024, parking summonses increased by 100% over the prior year. Mm-hmm. And while we appreciate the increased focus on parking, why are we using uniformed officers to enforce parking rules instead of preventing, detecting, and solving crimes in the city? And why aren't we using parking services resources to write parking tickets? I'm sure you can speak to that.
First and foremost, the Summit Police Department does not write metered tickets. So, anybody who gets a metered ticket,
not your problem. Right? Not your fault.
I'm just saying. That's not really within our wheelhouse. Parking Services does handle the meter tickets. So we'll move the classification over to the summonses for the police department to two main areas. Obviously, handicap is always an issue, but for the most part, people do the right thing, luckily. So we don't issue too many of those. But the two main areas that we do issue parking summonses for are prohibited areas, which I think we can all agree. We actually had an interview last week where one of the captain's candidates made a pretty funny I don't know if it was funny or not, but he had said, the parking is bad in the central business district when we can't find illegal parking as police officers. So that being said, prohibited area is a huge component for us, especially in the central business district, just to maintain some sense of structure, right? Sure. And then overnight parking. So there's benefits to both of those. The prohibited parking allows us to maintain a safe environment for pedestrians in the central business district. So in 2023, we had issued 229 prohibited parking tickets. And in 2024, based on the, I wouldn't call it public outcry, but like I had said earlier, it's data driven. And we speak with the business owners through SDI. We speak with our constituents and the residents downtown. And prohibited parking and crosswalks and pedestrian safety is a main issue for them. For sure. So we focused on the central business district, and like I said, we went from 229 in 2023 prohibited parking tickets to 787 in 2024. So it's not like we're not also investigating crimes during that time, but right. Most of these prohibited parking tickets are issued during the regular business hours by the officer that is assigned to the central business district, not necessarily assigned to prevent or counter car auto theft. The next type of ticket is the overnight parking ticket. So I think we all know if you live in town that there's an ordinance that says you can't park in the streets between the hours of 2:30 and 5 a.m. For the reason, you can go into that for a separate conversation of why the city has that ordinance. But for us, as far as policing is concerned, that is a great tool for us to identify suspicious vehicles. If our Area 2 car, which is a predominantly residential area within the town, is driving around between the hours of 2:30 and 5 and they see a vehicle on the street that's not supposed to be there, it's going to draw attention to them. So one of two things will happen. They'll draw attention to a car that's illegally parked because they don't have permission to park on the street, at which point they get the overnight parking summons. Or we encounter a suspicious vehicle that should not be there. If we had streets that were lined with cars similar to Hoboken, it would be hard for us to distinguish who's supposed to be there and who's not. So we do encourage our overnight police force, our night shifts, to enforce overnight parking, because not only are they identifying any cars that shouldn't be in the area and memorializing that by writing them a ticket or even writing them a warning, but it also shows us that they're putting rubber to the road. They're patrolling their areas, and if I have parking tickets from an officer that hits 6 different streets, I know that during the hours of 2:30 and 5, they were in their residential area patrolling the streets that they wanted to patrol. So I would actually make the argument that they aren't just focusing on parking tickets, they're actually focusing on home burglary and auto theft prevention by patrolling those streets through doing the parking enforcement.
Fair.
So overall, just to put the statistic on it, in 2023, the combined of the two types of tickets, we had 1,518. And then in 2024, we were up to 3,324. So the resident is correct. Yep. It increased more than 100%. Sure. But for me, that's a good thing. I know for anybody who's on the receiving end, probably not so
Maybe
much.
not. But. One thing, since we were talking about overnight parking, since we're here and we have an opportunity to educate the public, there's a way to register if you have a one-off where you're having your driveway repaved or something,
Yes.
and you have to park in the street. You can register on the website as
Yeah,
well.
Frontline is the
overnight park.
website. So if you go to the city's website, you'll be able to get access to it. But Frontline is the website. So if holidays, typically get blanket permission, and then there is no parking on the streets during inclement weather. But that being said, if you are having family over, whether it be a family reunion, your driveway's getting paved, you have to have a dumpster in your driveway, and you need to park on the street for a couple days. The police department of the city is very mindful of that. So no problem making accommodations. But we just we try to balance the people who tend to sometimes overuse that system.
Sure.
So it's a fine balance. But we do our best to kind of navigate that road.
Great, thank you. Just a little bit of noise at City Hall this evening.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess so let's talk a little bit about what's being done to address pedestrian safety concerns. So you talked a little bit about this in sort of the Central Business District, but what are some of the things that the police department has done in the last year or so, and or is doing currently, or is planning to do?
So within the last 12 months, council had approved to increase their table of organization, our police force, up 2 more officers. So our intention was not to just put 2 more officers on a specific shift. That's going to keep doing that, by the way.
Yeah.
Is not to just put 2 more officers on a specific shift, but to get the most for our maximize efficiency for those officers, right? So the initial deployment of the 2 officers were into hybrid positions. The reason we're utilizing the hybrid positions is because it allows us to flex. Again, I'm going to keep referring back to we're throwing darts at a moving target. So if that moving target is pedestrian safety and parking and traffic in the Central Business District, that's where our hybrid officer is going to focus. And that's where he's been focusing. I'm sure people have seen, if they've been paying attention over the last few months, we've had a lot of extra attention, parking summonses as you can see, to the Central Business District. That being said, if the data supports more of a manpower presence at night, because we have an uptick in auto theft or burglaries, that hybrid officer within their job description knows that their schedule can be flexed and they can support the Detective Bureau, the Community Services Bureau, or the Traffic Bureau. So that's some of the stuff that's at least one component of a tiered approach with the Central Business District. But my personal opinion as far as policing is concerned, and I've made this very known, is that there should be a police presence, someone that is within a block or 2 in the Central Business District between the hours of 7 a.m. and at the very least 10 p.m. It's the heart of the city. It's where everybody comes together to celebrate, to mourn, to do business, to shop, and at the end of the day, we do have the manpower to patrol our streets. Like I said, 80 miles of roadway is a lot of roadway, and we're out there. But that small, very consolidated area, that Central Business District with the train station and everything that goes on there, I'm a firm believer that we need to have representation there during those hours, and that's what we've been doing. That's what we'll continue to do. And our hope is, I think we can all agree that post-2020, post-COVID, people have gotten a little more reckless on the road. I see it every day, commuting to and from work. And our hope is that, through education, through enforcement, and then working with the city on possible engineering solutions, is to really get a handle on not only the pedestrian safety, traffic safety, and a variety of other things. Did we have a question that just came in?
Yes.
How exciting.
Live questions.
How exciting.
I know. I feel like somebody's watching. This is very cool.
41 people.
It's good that you can see that.
I can see that. Yeah.
My eyes are old. So one of the questions that came in, there was an incident that on Facebook, or something that was said on Facebook about an incident at Maybe Playground.
Gotcha. Yep.
And so the question is, what are we doing to protect our children?
We're doing everything to protect our children. That is our main focus, is to protect our children. So when it comes to school security, our officers are in and out of the schools every single day, all day. If feasible, we assign officers to drop off and pick up, because the children are everything. Not only is it threats against threats against children in the schools, but it's getting to and from schools. Pedestrian safety is huge. So making sure that our crossing guards feel supported, our families feel safe to walk, because we're not a busing district. So everybody is responsible to getting from point A to point B on their own. But that being said, to that Maybe Playground incident, I understand that someone did go on social media and had wrote about their experience on Maybe Playground with a person that was believed to be under the influence. which we did address accordingly with the report that we received. It was unfortunate that the information that the person had put on Facebook wasn't initially reported to us at the time. What had happened was we responded there for a report of an individual on the bench, possibly intoxicated. Just to give people a little bit of a background on this, the police department, we skate a fine line between, responding to calls for service and addressing quality of life issues, which we will do all day. If we see a quality of life issue that violates a municipal ordinance or a state statute, we will address it right then and there. Very little discretion when it comes to that. But when it comes to someone being in an area that just doesn't look like they're supposed to be there, or they might be under the influence of alcohol, unless we have, a formal report that they've committed a crime or they're a harm or to themselves or to somebody else, the police department has to kind of skate that fine line of the constitutional rights. So we'll go out, we'll do a wellness check on that person, which we did that night. We asked them to move along because obviously their presence in the area was, troubling to some of the families. But at the end of the day, the report that was made on Facebook was not the report that we had received at the time. I believe Councilman Boyer gave a pretty good detailed explanation at the last meeting.
Sure.
But at the end of the day, that day specifically, we did have 2 separate calls for service about an hour and a half apart from each other with 2 separate individuals sitting on, I think, the same bench, if not a bench in the same area, for, just possibly intoxicated, suspicious, not supposed to be there. And again, we have no problem going there, addressing the matter. We encourage people to call. But without the knowledge or information of that person committing a crime or an ordinance, it's hard for us to enforce something that we don't know happened, right? So, in that incident specifically, we found that information out after the fact, and I'm not sure if that was even actually really embedded after the fact. So,
okay.
But what we are doing to protect our children, we're in and around all the schools. We're high visibility at all the crosswalks. We're enforcing pedestrian safety. Like I said, the hybrid officer and the central business district officer have been out there and will continue to be out there because we understand that the central business district is where a lot of the middle schoolers and high schoolers go after school to congregate, to meet with friends. I mean, that's one of the reasons people move to Summit, because it supports such a great area for kids to feel safe and congregate and, maybe go to McCool's or maybe, go to Sweet Nothings and get, a treat after school. So we maintain that presence, and like I said, if anybody in and around the area that is threatening to our children or violating any quality of life ordinances or state statutes, we're going to be on it.
Great.
No, without delay.
Thank you.
You got it.
Excellent.
Did another one go in?
Another one came
How
in.
exciting.
This is exciting.
46.
We lost a couple.
No, we're going up. I thought we were at 41.
We were at 49.
I don't know. We're getting there.
Okay. So with all of the discussion about ICE, there's a question about what are we doing to reassure individuals that want to report a crime but are fearful of deportation.
So the Summit Police Department complies with the Attorney General's directive, the Immigrant Trust Directive. So what that means is that, the Summit Police Department, if you call the Summit Police Department to report a crime and your immigration status is in question, we are not, we're not permitted in the state of New Jersey to ask somebody's immigration status.
Right.
We are not permitted to proactively assist ICE or any federal agency with carrying out deportations. In addition, we try to bridge that gap, believe it or not. So over the course if you look at our most recent hires, over the course of the last 3 years, we've increased the amount of Spanish-speaking officers and Spanish officers. Because, I firmly believe, bridging that gap, there's nothing worse than being in a position, I couldn't imagine, I haven't been in it, but in a position where you've been victimized of a crime or a family member's been victimized, and you're worried about reporting that crime because you're worried about your immigration status. So that's not a concern for us. Obviously, if somebody is of the criminal element and their immigration status is questionable, that would be a road that we would navigate at the time. But as far as, assisting ICE or proactively looking for people's immigration status or looking to deport them, that is not the business of the Summit Police Department. And there are Attorney General directives that restrict us from doing certain, actions.
So what you're saying is, if you see a crime or you are a victim of a crime, you're not asking what immigration status,
Nope.
You're just addressing the crime because that's your job.
Exactly, 100%. And we encourage people to call. Mm-hmm. And like I had said, if you look at our most recent hire list, we have increased the amount of Spanish-speaking officers. I feel that's important to bridge that gap. Mm-hmm. If anybody was paying attention to the most recent census, we're north of 13-14% of Hispanic here in this town. which I think is important for the police department to properly represent the demographics of the town. Because, you know, there are cultural difference that now we can bridge that gap because we have officers that are from the same cultures, which I think is great. And we'll continue to work through that, and we'll continue to maintain that demographic breakdown to show the residents here at Summit that the police department accurately represents the populations of Summit as well.
Great. Excellent.
Great question.
Another question.
It's the 49th person.
What about the kids that are buzzing around on those scooters? I would say they're not only kids, but people that are buzzing around on the electric scooters. First of all, is there any discussion about that? And what is done? What are the rules? And also, if something happened, if there was an accident, who would be at fault?
So again, I would say that that's a multi-layered question. I can tell you that in sitting in the safety committee, that their council is approaching, or there have been discussions about an ordinance regarding e-bikes and scooters, because it is a hot topic. What I would make the recommendation for parents whose kids are on these scooters is to have the conversations at home about safety, because the last thing we want to see happen is somebody get hurt. We have seen it happen with these scooters. They can go pretty quick.
Yeah, they're fast.
You know, they are fast. It was actually pretty funny because we got my daughter a manual scooter for Christmas.
Man.
In this day and age,
was that one of the Amazon packages?
It was one of many. But you know, I had said to my wife when she was looking at the electric scooter, I'm like, no, she needs to be out there and pedaling. And then of course my neighbor got the electric scooter, and as soon as she was out there with her new scooter, it was, well, I want that one, right? So I understand they're attractive. I understand they get you from point A to point B in a timely fashion.
Sure.
But people just need to be mindful, and you need to be wearing a helmet because they are dangerous.
Yes.
We've dealt with both, to your point, children and adults that have had accidents. But I am looking forward to the new ordinance that council's looking to pass, because it'll give us the ability to enforce some of the violations that we're seeing. Kids riding on sidewalks, navigating in and out of cars, and not just kids, again, there are adults as well. But at the end of the day, you're not just creating an unsafe environment for yourself on the scooter or the e-bike, you're also creating an unsafe environment for other pedestrians and motorists around. So my recommendation would be to follow the rules of the road, and also protect yourself with helmets and whatever else you need. So
we recently had a situation where there was a motorized scooter that was in a crosswalk, and a child was hit, and the child was issued a summons because the child did not stop at a stop sign. So I want to remind people sort of what the rules are. If you're on a wheeled vehicle, whether it's a bike you're pedaling, or a motorized scooter,
you need to stop at all stop signs.
You have to stop at stop signs. You are, unless you are physically on your feet in a crosswalk, you are not considered a pedestrian. Is that correct?
Yeah, so that's another thing we need to be mindful of with the pedestrian safety is, just hitting the beacon does not give you the ultimate authority to step into that crosswalk. So pedestrians are responsible for making sure there's a breakage in traffic, or somebody's kind enough to stop, right? So, but often, we have seen in the past where pedestrians have pressed the beacon and then just immediately stepped into traffic, which can be dangerous, right? So we got to get back to
look both ways.
Look both ways. Yeah, look both ways. To hit the beacon if it's there. If not, definitely look both ways. But once that foot has stepped into the crosswalk, as long as you waited for that break in traffic, you now have the right of way. So people who are motorists, just be mindful. If you're approaching a crosswalk and somebody steps into that crosswalk, they have the right of way. And we do see that quite a bit uptown. Like I said, that's why our officers are up there, because that's the main, main method of travel. Once you park downtown, it's like, let's walk to this restaurant, let's walk to the park, let's walk to the train station. So people do need to be mindful. If you are not in the crosswalk, you do not have the right of way. Once there's a break in traffic, you enter the crosswalk, you now the vehicles need to yield to you.
Awesome. Thanks for the reminder.
You got it.
The other thing I'd like to remind people, because I see it happen all the time, and it kind of drives me a little bonkers, is the people that are walking across the street looking like this in their phones. I think that we just all need to remember that it's not just, the onus is on all of us. And I think that we can't stress that enough. You can be in the middle of a crosswalk and be right that you were correct, that you had the right of way, but if you didn't see the car coming, you're never getting out of its way. So
yeah, we've been there before. We've seen it, and it's horrible to see. On video when somebody is in the crosswalk, they are on the right and they're doing the right thing. They look both ways, but unfortunately, their attention gets drawn to whether it be a phone or something else, and then a vehicle enters their pathway and it doesn't go well.
Right.
Another question.
Another question. Well, I think I had one that I didn't answer yet. I didn't ask yet.
Okay.
And that was, the question was formulated as, what are we doing about the people who are sitting on the benches drinking all day and being intoxicated in our public spaces?
So I kind of touched on it before with the maybe playground scenario. So again, when it comes to quality of life issues, if there's an ordinance violation or a state statute that's violated, we will address it with very little discretion. We understand that the residents have concern about people congregating in and around the train station, not just there, but other areas like our parks. But we also, as police officers, we have to protect people's constitutional rights. Mm-hmm. So we do skate this fine line between moving people along who are making other people feel uncomfortable and protecting their constitutional rights to be at certain places. But when it comes to open containers, panhandling, indecent exposure, disorderly conduct, mm-hmm. I don't care if you are housed or unhoused. It doesn't matter to us, and we see it from all different walks of life.
Sure.
Sometimes we see people get off the train from the city who had a rough day at work, hit happy hour, and things go south. And, you got a disorderly person at the train station, and then we see the other side of it. So at the end of the day, our officers are doing everything they can to address these issues, while also being mindful of people's constitutional rights. So that's where we are with that.
Thank you. Another question came in. I mean, do you feel so popular?
I feel like we're just increasing numbers here, 54.
So the question goes back to pedestrian safety, and two locations at which this question was highlighting. One is at Euclid and Summit Avenue, and one was at DeForest and Beechwood. Mm-hmm. Two crossings where the comment was, I've seen a lot of near misses, or people that the drivers just don't stop. Mm-hmm. What can we do to improve these crossings? Are there things already sort of in the hopper that maybe are addressing those two particular intersections?
So when it comes to traffic safety, talk to any traffic officer, they'll tell you it comes through education, enforcement, and engineering. So as far as those two areas are concerned, educating the public, which I think we're doing now, we'll continue to do through PSAs and social media campaigns. Just be mindful. Keep your head on a swivel. Even if, like you said, even if you enter a crosswalk and you're in the right of way, it doesn't mean you have an invisible shield around you. So those areas are specific problem areas, because Summit Avenue is a busy street. Not only is it a busy street, you tend to get people that come around the bend, they go a little bit faster. As they are exiting town, they tend to go a little bit faster. So you have to provide yourself a little bit more anticipation time for the vehicles that are coming into that crosswalk when you're putting yourself out there. When it comes to enforcement, I encourage residents, if they have an area that they've seen issues, to either send us an email or a complaint, and we will address it. Like I said, we're constantly throwing darts at a moving target. We don't have all the problem areas listed. If we're not informed of them, they do change. They change all the time. Yep.
You were on Pine Grove last week, and everybody's behaving themselves now because they saw a cop there every day, and then you leave, and a month later you need to go back.
Yep. So speaking with Lieutenant Daly, he does have a running roster of streets that are problem areas that the Traffic Safety Bureau will rotate through. Good. But we always add more. Right. Or if we've addressed an issue and the residents seem to be satisfied with what has transpired, whether it be a speed hump or a stop sign or something with engineering or enforcement, then maybe we can move on to the next location. But again, without proper reporting or complaints, we have countless crosswalks in town. So I would encourage residents to call, report, so we can then adjust accordingly.
Okay. Another one came in. I'm actually going to just read this one.
Shoot.
I learned that at a Summit self-defense class that you can text 911 in our town and you can message with your issue. Mm-hmm. Can you explain how this works? It came up in a conversation about what they should do in a situation of a break-in. So
Mountain Valley Emergency Communications is our communication center. It's actually out of New Providence. It's a regional dispatch center. I think it was within the last 2 years they implemented a software where you can text to 911. I'm not completely familiar about the logistics, the ins and outs of how that works, but I do encourage people that if you can call, I would call, right? Obviously, you might be in a scenario where texting is your only option because you don't want to draw any attention to the fact that you're calling an emergency number. Right. So it's great that we have that resource. We could text her right now and see what happens.
We'll see who responds
yeah, let's see
to
what
the mayor's office.
But I would always encourage to call, right?
Yeah.
Because you don't just assume that somebody else called.
Right.
That's the biggest
Yeah.
thing is a lot of people will be in a, it's really unfortunate in this day and age because a lot of times things will start to unfold in front of, certain people's eyes and the first instinct is start recording.
Yeah,
Which can serve a purpose.
Instead of calling 911.
I will admit it does serve a purpose because we will pull those people, we'll get statements, and ultimately we get copies of those videos, and it can help for charging and ultimately, court proceedings. But don't just assume that somebody called. We always, if you have information on a crime that's occurring or you're witnessing it, we always encourage to call. But again, obviously the text to 911 is another resource that our Mountain Valley Communication has offered up to people in the area. One other thing I would be mindful of is if you are in the area of like River Road, closer to Morris County, your 911 call is going to bounce off the nearest cellular tower. And they have a regional dispatch center in Morris County. So we do encourage certain people, like if you're on Route 24 or if you're on River Road closer to Chatham, to possibly call the non-emergency number because you're directly going to come to the Summit Police Department. If you dial 911 and it redirects you through cellular up to Morris County, it's going to delay our response. It's going to delay any information that you may have. So I would encourage people. I don't live in Summit, but the town that I do live in, I do have the non-emergency number saved to my phone in case 911 redirects me. Instead of waiting to be transferred through multiple phone trees, it's just I'll hang up and call the non-emergency number. So just be mindful of that when you're out on 2478. You're within Summit's jurisdictions, but you are kind of at the discretion of the nearest cellular tower, and that's where 911 is going to bounce you off of.
That's great information.
Yeah,
Thank
I
you.
thought so.
We got more.
We got
We
more.
have more.
A couple more, but then we're gonna.
Okay, excellent.
It's almost bedtime.
Okay, it's almost bedtime. Yeah. Okay. Will you bring in a separate task force to deal with vehicle burglaries?
So we have. So like I had said before, we participate in regional task force. What does that look like? That looks like if someone in Union County or Somerset County or Morris County is having issues with home burglaries or auto thefts, they'll call on these regional task force to deploy officers. Data driven, if the data supports that, Thursday night, Sunday night, whatever the case may be, that's where the criminal element is coming in. We'll deploy a massive amount of officers, not only as a deterrent, but also hopefully as a proactive measure to catch these people in the act.
Didn't that recently result in?
Yes, it did. So just after the most, and it happens quite a bit, and oftentimes, we will put that information out, but there are times where it just, we deal with a lot. Like I said, 50,000 calls for service. Our officers are out there all night patrolling, and I can't tell you how many countless times where our officers have encountered, criminal elements in the act. And just the other night, we had I don't want to go too much into the technology because don't want to give away the playbook, but something that we had in place, a mechanism that we have in place technology-wise, notify our officers. They responded to the area and ultimately chased the criminal element out of town. In addition to participating in regional deployment, we also have in-house. So when I talk about overtime details, essentially what we're doing is we're bringing together officers with a specific mission. That mission is to prevent and hopefully catch any people that are attempting to do motor vehicle or home burglaries or car thefts. So we do both. It's kind of twofold. It's regionally and it's also internally. Do we have a full-time task force? No, because it's just not feasible for a department our size.
Sure.
If we had a few hundred officers, then yeah, absolutely, we put
Are you asking for?
a few hundred officers would really go over well with the taxpayers. But that being said, we do deploy them when the data supports the deployment.
Okay.
So they're not deployed all the time.
Sure.
But if we do see an uptick, you will see an increase in officers. There's obviously a financial liability to the police department's operating budget when it comes to that, but we feel that it's precision policing. At the end of the day, if the statistics and data states that it warrants a deployment and it's going to counter any future criminal activity, then that's what we're going to do.
Great. One more question. If you have a landline at home and you dial 911, is there that necessitates deployment of 911 resources?
Yes.
You don't have to even say anything. Is that correct?
Yeah. So no matter what, if we go on, and I think I put this in the, we do a social media post every year. So the social media post is more of an activity post. How many calls for service? How many motor vehicle stops? And you see 911 hangups.
Right.
Deal with them all the time.
Yeah.
We deal with them most when the elementary schools talk about 911 because the kids come home and they're like,
try it out.
yeah. So they try it out, and sure enough, they get a response. So we cannot ignore a 911 call. There's been countless times where somebody will dial 911, and then they hit the second one. It automatically triggers a 911 call. To which point dispatch will start rolling a police officer in that direction, but also maybe give a call back. The resident will be like, oh, it was my 5-year-old, no issue. We still need to come vet the call. because we never know that if somebody was seeking help and that they're now in a position where they can't get that help. So no matter what, if you call 911, we are going to respond. If it's from a cellular phone, we will try to pinpoint the geographic location as best as possible. If you're moving, obviously that creates a little bit of a challenge for us.
Sure.
But when it comes from a residence, 100%, we're going to respond. We're going to make contact with you. We're going to make sure everything's right. So even if you are experiencing an emergency, even if it's a medical emergency and you can't talk, you dial 911, it will trigger a police response, and then we'll go from there. We'll assess the situation when we arrive on scene. If we see signs of forced entry, if we see somebody in distress, we'll handle that accordingly.
All right. Last question, I'm told.
You said that several times.
But wait. Okay. Hold on, I gotta hold it out further. No, what I was gonna say is, do you think that we should go back to rotary phones so that you can't mistakenly dial 911? Think
Is
about
that the question?
No, that's my question.
I gotta be honest, I saw a video online where a dad gave his 2 teenage sons a rotary phone and told them to call a number, and
you couldn't figure it out.
Couldn't figure it out.
I saw that.
Yeah,
too.
couldn't figure it out. So no, I'd stick
if
with push
anybody
to
that's
talk.
watching doesn't know what a rotary phone is, then I should probably retire to a beach. So the last question is, what are we doing about delivery drivers who are speeding through our town?
We are enforcing speeding.
The same thing we're doing for the moms that are in the minivans driving speeding through town?
Speeding is always going to be an issue, especially in residential areas. And the vast majority of our 80 miles of roadway is residential areas. And we understand that people are in a rush. We're always fall behind schedule from time to time. So, but that being said, our encouragement would be to report problem areas. Again, we can't be everywhere at once. We have our problem areas that we rotate through and make sure that we do traffic enforcement, radar enforcement. But without, we need the public's assistance. Sure. So if somebody is speeding down your street, feel free to call us, send us an email, file a complaint online, and we'll make it a point to go out there and address that accordingly. But delivery drivers, I don't want to just pinpoint them. I know that they're in a rush. They're trying to make a living. They're trying to get from one delivery to the next. I get that. We do our best to mitigate that through radar and through traffic enforcement. But it's not just them. It's all of us. There are times where everybody's running a little bit late, and you get caught. But we do deploy unmarked vehicles. The vast majority of our fleet is marked. You'll see them; they're black and white. I like the marked units because they draw attention, and oftentimes, I've said this to you several times. When our officers are driving around in a police car, and everybody's always saying, traffic's out of control here, or speeding's out of control there, and then we go down in our marked police car and just like everybody said, 10 and 2, and behaving, and then we get in our personal cars to drive home, and everybody's driving out of control again. So, be mindful. We do have traffic units that are ghost cars, so they look a little bit less. They're more covert, and we'll typically utilize those when we deploy radar or some type of other operation that we don't want to really be seen. But we're always out there. We have our traffic safety bureau. Which is comprised of several officers, and their main focus is not answering calls for service. It is addressing traffic issues in town. So I encourage people, if you do have an issue on your street, or if you observe an area that you feel is troubled, to give us a call or send us an email, and we'll be happy to address it.
For sure. And there are, between the police department, of course, always let them know about traffic and safety concerns, but you can also always send an email to our city clerk, because that will get routed to a committee. If it's a big enough issue, for instance, going back to, somebody asked the question about the crosswalks at DeForest and Beechwood and at Summit and Euclid. Those actually, I know Summit and Euclid has been in safety, and I unfortunately forget where it is, but I think there may be a new flashing beacon going there.
Okay.
I'm not positive, but things like that, those intersections that you feel are troublesome, we can certainly put in committee, and you can route it through either the police department or the clerk's office or council or myself. That's a great way for us. You're our eyes and ears, and you're the eyes and ears for our police department as well. So please be sure, don't be afraid to reach out with questions or concerns, because that's what we're here for. We're here to address your questions and your concerns. So we're about to wrap up. A couple of things that I am tasked with making sure I tell everybody. April 1st, which is next Tuesday, is the deadline for applying for the Police Youth Academy.
That's right.
Which is an amazing program. There's 2 separate weeks. It's really fantastic. It's during July. And the high school 1 Moment 3 Decisions program is tomorrow. And so you should have gotten an alert saying that there's parking concerns, parking changes near the high school, and also don't be alarmed. There will be emergency vehicle activity at the high school. This is a planned activity. It is an educational activity. It's excellent. This is, I think, it's every other year. I think this is the 5th.
I want to say it's the 5th.
Fifth
I know
time,
that
think
the
it's the
student
fifth
assistant
time.
counselor and I had gone through the entire planning process from 2019 into 2020, and
And
a
then
week
it didn't
before
happen.
we implemented it, COVID hit.
Right.
But yeah, so the initial rollout was 2016.
That's right.
So we did 16, 18, 20 got washed, 22, and now, or I'm sorry, 23, and now 25. So yeah,
5th time.
Yep.
So it's a great program, but do not be alarmed if you hear a lot of sirens and see vehicles at the high school. This is a planned event.
That's right.
And then if there are any other questions, you are welcome to follow up, and you can send your email to pressoffice@cityofsummit.org. I think that's a wrap, and thank you, incoming Chief Peters, for being here tonight.
Thank you for having me.
And for all of the incredible information that you've provided tonight. And thank you all for joining us.
Take care.